Hi, I'm Ceej Tantengco, and in today's vlog, we're going to be talking about how to rack it till you make it, aka 5 tips to grow your freelancing career. So the thing about me is that I started freelancing 10 years ago. I was still in college, maybe I think my junior year, and I decided, okay, I need some extra money and I need to get a head start on my career because we all know that media doesn't pay that well, so I need to build this. So I started writing for magazines when I was a third-year college student, and I never really stopped. Even when I graduated and I took my first job at GMA News, I was writing for magazines. When I then moved to a small branding firm, I would use my leaves so that I could take more gigs writing for magazines. And even when I got in front of the camera and became a reporter, I was always freelancing. I was taking jobs writing the scripts of the entire broadcast. I did work as a segment producer. I started getting gigs at production houses writing scripts for TV commercials. In 2016, I left my job at the creative agency where I was working, and I decided to make freelancing my thing. Over the years, I've been able to build this to the point at which I am comfortable financially pursuing my freelance jobs. I am able to treat myself and my family to the things that I like, and I feel a great sense of confidence and pride knowing that I was able to build this from the ground up. I wanted to share my experiences because I think it's important that you hear it from someone who comes from a middle-class background. Because aminin natin, it's easier to pursue freelancing when you come from a privileged background. Mas kaya ng may kaya to absorb the financial burden of having a bad month in terms of gigs. Mas kaya ng may kaya to have their own equipment and to purchase their own supplies for their freelancing work. And mas kaya ng may kaya to have the certain connections and social capital that it takes to network in the industry and find jobs more easily. These are tips that you can use to grow your career from one middle-class girl to you. Let's get started. Freelancing tip number 1. Your opportunities are determined by your skill set, not by your course. I know so many people who are able to freelance in industries that have nothing to do with what they took up in college. One great example of this is how my dad used to tell me that he had a lot of friends from med school who became doctors because their parents told them to, and then they weren't happy, they left it, and they ended up putting up food businesses. And the same is true for me. My course in college was communication. We were given the choice of whether to take film, advertising, journalism, and media studies. I never took a single advertising class. Most of my classes were from the film track, and yet I've never worked on a film set. Most of the work that I do is in advertising. I do PR, I do journalism, obviously, as a reporter, as a writer. I feel like your course is more important the younger you are, because when you apply for your first job, that's what they look at. But the more experience you have, the older you are, the less your course is actually relevant. Because what people are looking for is your skill set and ano bang kaya mong gawin. So my big advice to you is, instead of limiting yourself by, oh, this is what I took in college, I can't go outside of this. Instead of thinking that way, just think, what skills can I add to my toolkit so that I can take different kinds of work. You can sign up for classes on websites like Skillshare and Domestika. Over the Christmas break, I bought a bunch of Domestika classes. They had a sale. So for under 500 pesos, I was able to get classes for illustration, for copywriting, for social media management. And that's a very reasonable investment that you can make in yourself. Buy yourself books on the topics that you want to pursue and just keep learning, because the more that you learn, the more that you can do. Freelancing tip number 2, slide into it. So real talk though, clients will not come right away. So instead of quitting your job and saying, mag-freelancer ako, try to integrate more and more freelancing alongside your regular job until you're at the point where it's coming regularly and you can say, okay, kaya ko nang mag-quit ng regular job ko. By sliding into it, you stay worry-free while you build your catalog and you build your network to the point na kaya mo nang mag-quit ng regular job mo. At the same time, you also have the flexibility that in case your freelancing adventure tells you that, okay, maybe this isn't for me. And that's perfectly valid. Not everybody has to be a freelancer. But in case that's what you discover about yourself, then because you didn't leave your regular job, then it's just there waiting for you. You didn't actually lose anything. Freelancing tip number 3, wag masyadong hipster. This was a mistake that I made when I was younger kasi I started actually joining essay contests. I really thought of myself when I was a teenager as a literary writer. And I thought I'm never going to do advertising because that's just selling things. It's selling out. I don't want to do it. I want to make art. And if my teenage self had had her way, wala akong pera ngayon. And if you're like me, I'm middle class and I want things. I have goals, you know. I want to have a condo. I want to buy things for my family. I want to make sure that we have enough insurance. I want to make sure that when my parents get old, they're taken care of. And when you have those priorities, you can't limit yourself to only art for art's sake work. These days, I write for advertising and I love it. I think it's entirely possible to find work that is both commercial and artistically stimulating. I find it also artistically stimulating to do work like managing the social media of basketball teams. Is it commercial? Yes. But is it also fun? Yes, because there is the artistic challenge of creating something that didn't exist in this space before. There's the artistic challenge of knowing that I want the Philippines to catch up to the NBA in terms of the designs we're putting out. So I don't think you have to choose between being commercial and being artistic. It's not mutually exclusive. You can be both. And when you embrace being both, then your world opens up. My friend Carl, who has been a huge influence on my career as a creative writer, is also the COO of a startup. And he had some great advice to me, which is, kahit sina Michelangelo, kumuha sila ng day job. So all of the Renaissance painters who we think of as, ooh, fine art, you know, there are also people who did commercial work, painting portraits of rich people so that they could fund their own art for art's sake work. So don't think of commercial work as something that kills your vibe or kills your creativity. I like to think of commercial work as something that actually empowers my creativity, because by having commercial work, that frees me up. That takes the pressure off my art. I think when we're young, there is that tendency to think of there's art and then there's commercial, and anytime you choose commercial over art, you are selling out. That's not true. I think by embracing commercial work, you actually relieve the pressure from your art to make money, because art isn't always going to make you money. But if you embrace the commercial work, then your art stays pure. It becomes something that you just do for yourself, and there's less pressure for it to pay the bills. Freelance tip number 4. You are your own manager. Now, not everyone is going to have a manager. I don't have a manager. I've never had a manager. And part of being a good freelancer is learning how to advocate for yourself, learning how to negotiate for yourself, and not sitting around waiting for the projects to come to you. You need to learn how to pitch and negotiate and communicate your value to potential clients. Now, I mentioned negotiating. The first part of that is understanding what the going rates are for the work that you want to do in the industry, because you don't want to undersell yourself. You don't want to sell yourself short. At the same time, you don't want to charge so high that you get a reputation for being unreasonable and being a diva in the industry. The second part of being a manager is approaching it thinking of yourself as, I'm not just a technical worker, but I'm also someone who is running my own business. It just happens to be that my business is myself. And so whenever I deal with clients, I try to be as professional as possible. I know it's very tempting to be chummy and as friendly as you can, but sometimes that gets in the way of your ability to negotiate. So develop that muscle of being friendly but professional at the same time, so that you always are in a good position to advocate for your rights as a freelancer, to push for being paid on time, and to approach them, and for them to feel comfortable that they're dealing not just with some random person, but with a working professional who brings value to their company. Tip number 5, and this is probably the most important: get real about the money. Here's the thing about freelancing. It has very high highs and very low lows. When we talk about projects, some projects can be huge, but they're not always regular. And if you want to make full-time freelancing your career, then you need to be realistic about what the money situation is going to be like, so that you can either set your goals and work towards them, or you can plan your life so that you're more prepared to weather the low months. Ito na talaga, real talk na talaga. Just to show you the highs and lows of freelancing life, the most that I've ever made in a month of freelancing was close to 300,000 pesos. And I'm not saying that to brag, because the lowest that I've ever made, and this is when the pandemic hit and all of my events got canceled and my contracts got cut because of budget adjustments, was 15,000 pesos, which is pretty sad because that's lower than my monthly salary as a fresh graduate at GMA. And so my big advice to you is, you're not going to have great months all the time, you're also not going to have terrible months all the time. So it's very important that you plan your finances not around the highs, but around the average of what you pull in a month. If there's anything to take away from the pandemic and what it's done to us, it's that nothing is safe and we need to prepare. Here's a little exercise that you can try. Imagine that you don't have a job. How much would your living expenses for 6 months be? Now, that amount is different per person depending on the lifestyle that you want to keep, but whatever that amount is, make that your goal that you save towards for your emergency fund. And then, once you're comfortable, get into investing. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be something you're comfortable with. So you can always start small and conservative, like maybe get yourself some basic insurance, try out some small investment products that you can get through a financial services provider or through your bank. And then when you're already comfortable with making regular investments, then you can move on to something that's perhaps bigger or riskier. For example, in my case, I started when I was 25. I wish I started earlier, but I wasn't in a position financially to do so. And so I started with insurance, with mutual funds, time deposits, and when I finally had several good years of freelancing, then I was able to start with real estate. So what's important is to get started as soon as you can, so that you can start climbing that ladder as soon as you can also. And those are my 5 tips for building your freelance career. Let me know in the comments which ones you found the most useful. Share your own comments. Let me know what your tips are for building a freelance career. I can't wait to read them, learn from you, and reply to each and every one of you. I've got more videos planned for you, so don't forget to like and subscribe so that you get notified when the new video comes out. My name is Ceej Tantengco. You can find me on social media at Ceej Today on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'm gonna see you here for the next video. Happy freelancing!